Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. I'm your host, Tom Rock, and today's episode I'm going to chat about water-based exercise and at least my experience in the applications of it and how I've gone about it in the past and how I see its usefulness. This discussion comes off the back of one of our face-to-face students, Tommy, for passing it on to me and asking some questions about it. So this episode is in regards to that one. So Tommy, hope you get a bit out of it. If you do have any follow-ups, hopefully I want to hear more about how you apply it and how you've utilized it and how you do utilize it. But this is just sort of my take on water-based exercise and some different circumstances where I think it can be really, really useful. So it's generally not in your typical exercise program prescription a lot of the time, especially if you're in gym like Anytime Fitness, Good Life, Bigger Change gyms. Leisure centers, potentially you might see it, but not a lot of personal trainers are going out of their way to program, I guess, water-based exercise, which is absolutely fine. But there is definitely applications for it, I think, depending on your client and their goals. It's not something I think you need to try fit into every single program. It's quite an individualized thing, but there's definitely uses for it. So I'll just chat today about three or four sort of use cases that I think it applies well to, and we can go from there. But the first one that I'll talk about is individuals with joint conditions, and generally you can sort of generalize towards older adults, but generally things like arthritis and joint issues that cause joint pain. Water-based exercise can be really good, and you find a lot of older adults do sit in this category, but it can help minimize the load on joints. So things like water aerobics that you'll see at leisure centers, they run a lot of water-based aerobics and water-based fitness classes, can be really good for sort of that minimizing the impact on joints if someone does have any sort of joint conditions. And this generally comes down to the buoyancy that the water provides. So it provides us, so it will mean there's less stress on the overall joints, generally the lower body joints. So it allows them to get some exercise benefits, and it could be cardiovascular, hopefully cardiovascular stimulus, and maybe some strength there, or at least muscular stimulus provided. It's probably not a lot, but depending on the level, at least it's going to get the muscles moving and working through ranges of motion in potentially a fun environment that is less stress on joints. So really great one for that, and a really probably a common application of it you'll see in leisure centers and things where they have water aerobics classes. The next reason, and probably the one that I've applied water-based exercise the most, I think, in terms of programming, is injury rehabilitation programs. And the reason behind it is similar to, I guess, the benefits that we see in the older adults classes or the group act classes, is that water provides buoyancy. So it can take stress off joints. And when we look at athlete rehabilitation, it can play a key role in their return to play programs, and it's generally early on in the early stages. So for example, if an athlete has like an ankle injury, for example, there's generally pain and swelling and that sort of thing, and the first step is generally to restore range of motion to the joint, but then you might find there's a period of time where they've got range of motion, but it's actually still painful to, say, walk on and move through that sort of range of motion, active range of motion on land. If, however, we can get them into water potentially, and we can go through the ranges of motion pain-free, just due to the less stress on the joint based on the buoyancy of water, we can get them going through that active ranges of motion, walking and things like that, calf raises potentially if we're talking about an ankle injury, without the added stress of gravity. Basically, it basically takes off that weight off the joint, so we can actively move it with less weight. So really good application. I think it can serve a stepping point from, say, not being able to weight bear to weight bearing exercises, and it's that sort of middle ground that can keep the joint moving and start to build back range of motion during active range of motion and those functional movements, before having to transition to fully or body weight loaded movements, even just such as walking or calf raises, for our ankle example. So allowing us to move through functional ranges of motion, I think, during that early rehabilitation stage is a benefit of water-based exercise. And depending on the injury, you can program a whole different sort of range of little pull session to start getting that joint moving again, which is really, really cool. The last sort of one I want to discuss is more of the performance-based application. And obviously water-based exercises, if we're talking about swimming or swimming sessions, if you're a swimmer, obviously they're really, really good and you'll do a lot of water-based exercises. For the general population, or we're talking more about, this one's more of an athlete or performance-based application, is if someone is doing a lot of running, let's say they're training, it could be a team sport, a field team sport like footy or soccer or something like that, or it could even be someone who's training for like a 10K time trial and trying to beat their 10K time, anything like that. If their main modality of cardiovascular exercise and training is running, obviously I'm going to do most of their program and conditioning in that modality, just so they build up the muscular endurance capacity and work capacity in that actual sport or that skill that they're trying to train for. However, swimming or pool-based exercise can be a good option as a mix-up or off legs type session. So it does reduce that lower body stress, but still allows some cardiovascular stimulus to happen. So it wouldn't be sort of a crux of their training, but once every couple of weeks, if I wanted a sort of a longer session or just a lighter cardiovascular session without having them to load the legs and put that stress on the body due to potentially training load, that's something you can really do. It sort of allows, it can keep training interesting and mix it up so it's not super monotonous all the time for athletes, but it allows for that probably lighter, less joint stress, less stress on the body, but still a cardiovascular stimulus. And there's an option for that. So that's a really good way for pool-based exercise. The other pool or the other sort of performance-related one, I guess, is a recovery modalities. Are really can be good in the pool. It depends on access and things like that, but it's not going to be the be-all and end-all of a recovery protocol. But it can be a mix-up. It can help reduce the perception, I guess, of delayed onset muscle soreness or DOMS. And that could be simply doing after game day or after the day after a heavy session. You might do some mobility style movements in a pool, whether it's lunging up and back, glute stretches. You can do all sorts of stuff, hamstring sweeps. All these things can be done in sort of hip deep water, and it might be conjoined with a light swim potentially too. So it can be a good way to get the body moving the next day after a sort of a game or an event or something like that, to promote recovery a little bit, but also just to reduce the perception, I guess, of DOMS and get everything moving again post game day. But just some different uses of it. But yeah, I hope you got a bit out of that. Tommy, if anyone out there has any other ways that they've implemented water-based exercise into their program, I'd love to hear. I know there's a lot of other methods and applications of it, so I'd love to get your ideas. If you do have any thoughts or questions on this or how it can fit in or how to program it, put a comment in the chat or send an email to me as well. Happy to do a follow-up episode if I need to, or Tommy, come back to me, let me know what you think, and we can go again. But hope you got a bit out of that, guys. That's sort of water-based exercise and how it helps. It generally comes down to the buoyancy and the stress release stuff. But yeah, joint conditions, rehab, and then sort of that cross-training session to change, still get a stimulus, but reduce the lower body, the load on the lower body if it's a more of a running-based sport all the time. But yeah, quick little episode, guys. I hope you got a bit out of that. Have a think about it. If you haven't used pool-based exercise in your program, there might be circumstances where you want to chuck it in. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, send an email to tom@afa.com.au. Happy to cover anything you guys would like me to chat about. Other than that, guys, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon.